Welcome to the Iowa blog. This is a special episode that is devoted to Chag Sukah. There is so much I want to share with you. I almost don't know where to start because there is so much to learn, so much to know, so much to unlearn and to unknow before we can actually understand all that Yahowah has to say to us. I don't very often get flustered. I've been doing this now for 24 years, anywhere from 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week. Well, it's well over 100,000 hours. I've written, I think it's 38 books now, all total, well over 25,000 pages devoted to my translations of the oldest manuscripts, particularly of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've come to know Yahowah reasonably well. I think better than anyone in the past 2,500 years. In fact, I would say certainly better than anyone in that period of time. And we've gone through a lot together. It has been an extraordinarily exciting learning process, on-the-job training, if you will. And we've come so very far. And at that time, as can be attested in these many books that I have written, I'm surrounded by most of them at this moment. You can see them behind me. I have been able, through the amplified translations of the oldest manuscripts, scrubbed of the diacritical markings of the Masoretes, and returning each word to its root, been able to deduce somewhere around 10,000 insights that had never been seen previously, unheralded, many of them extraordinarily profound. I would say the most important of them would be, of course, reintroducing Yahowah's name and proving the proper pronunciation of it. But second unto that would be the realization that David is our Messiah and our King, the former and returning King, God's chosen one, who volunteered to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in 33 CE. He is the person that was robbed to create the myth of Jesus. I don't think there is a more important insight than that, perhaps in all of human history. And I'm going to share more insights with you now as we progress through Sukah, because while it has been a genuine joy to learn from Yahowah through his prophets over these past 24 years, in the last 6 months, I have learned more and come to understand more than I did in the previous 2 years, which I thought were extraordinary. And in those 2 years, I learned more than I had in the 20 years prior to them. And so the rate to which I'm now able to process what Yahowah is sharing and understand the nuances that he is conveying has grown exponentially. But just in this last week, I feel like I've come to understand more than maybe I have in the last 6 months. It is an extraordinary opportunity to sit at Yahowah's feet and to explore his revelations with him. I will tell you that what I have learned and now translating and about halfway through the commentary on 2 Samuel 6, most extraordinary prophecy I have ever read and may ever read. It speaks of a historic event. I don't think anyone in all of time has recognized that it was prophetic of our situation right now, right here. But every word of it is. There are so many intricate, subtle, profoundly important insights woven through that text that it was, well, even to this moment, it is almost impossible to sit still long enough to write them down. You don't know if you should be jumping for joy, screaming at the top of your lungs, or bemoaning the fact that why was this not known for all of this time? But it was something that Yahweh asked me to do after the most recent attack by a group of very malignant people who would deprive Yahweh of his name, Dode of his standing with God, and of course, the collaboration that Yahweh and I have been undertaking for these past 24 years, as well as the result, which is to reconcile the remnant of Yisrael. Every word of it speaks of those things. And yet, as excited as I was to continue that today, and it has been now 2 days since I have spoken to you, because my last program with you was on Friday evening. We had the Thursday show and then Friday. And we ignited the fire on Thursday evening, which was one of the most marvelous expressions of a Miqra I have ever participated in approaching the light and explaining the purpose of that light pursuant to Kippurim. And then we had a marvelous family hour, one of the most interesting ever, as we tried to address those who would invert Yahweh's testimony to imply that Yahweh wants us to be modest or somehow humble, when in fact God wants no such thing. God is looking for men who are bold and women who will support that in them. God's great love is for the Gabor. And from what I can tell, the only existence anywhere in Yah's story of someone who is meek is that they are failed. Lot was meek, and he barely made it out of Sodom alive, and he immediately went to a drunken incest exchange with his daughters. That really isn't a very good role model if you're looking for meek. Meek just doesn't exist among those who stand strong with Yahweh. It is translated incorrectly that Moshe and I think it's the 11th or the 12th chapter, not 12th chapter of Devarim, not Devarim, but Bamidbar, Numbers, that Moshe was somehow the most humble of men, when it actually uses a na to say that Moshe was the most responsive of men. And as we pursued that, it was so invigorating to know that Yahweh was very clear in describing his interactions with Dode, because he said Dode is not only his chosen one, but his reasons for choosing Dode were clearly his own and were contrary to the way that humans prefer to choose people. And then we hear so much about God talking about the boldness, the courage, the Gabor of his beloved son, that this was exceedingly reassuring. And I spent the weekend, as many of you know who follow me on X and on Facebook, translating 2 Samuel 6, somehow oblivious to the fact that it's the preamble to the single most important prophecy of my life, the one that brought us together. That is found in 2 Samuel 7. It's the story of homes, who builds them, who lives in them, and of Yahweh's commitment to Dod's return as king of forevermore. And what most don't realize is that the episode in the 6th chapter of 2 Samuel is simply the prelude to that. It's what qualified Dod for that respite. Because Dod had perhaps the worst moment of his life in that previous chapter, followed by the most glorious, all pursuant to bringing the Ark of the Covenant toward Jerusalem, and finally realizing that Obed-Edom, this one who serves from Edom, the man from Edom, would be the one who would assist in getting that ark repositioned where it belongs. And that he is the one who will save many because he is the Adam of Perah. They are one and the same. And that is why the whole episode pivots on a bull, a bakar, taking on the guilt and rendering unindebted the remnant of Israel. That is the story, and Dod did not understand it, even though it was presented very clearly throughout the Torah over and over again on the role that bull would play in God's plans. But Dod missed it, and he had a meltdown, and he got very angry at God, just like Moshe, the great prophet, had previously, as he gave up and said horrible things to God because the children of Israel were so difficult. But the story of how Yahweh caused Dod to recognize the truth, and how he caused Dod to recognize he had made a terrible mistake, and then encouraged him to correct that mistake, and how Dod recovered from that. It set up one of the most beautiful scenes ever, and probably the single greatest retort in the history of comeback lines. And one that was written prophetically to an event that I will compare it to when we go over that material here in the next few days, perhaps. But all of that, and Dod's mistake and his recovery from that mistake in such glorious fashion, is what set up this great tribute to Dod in 2 Samuel 7. And I thought, wow, okay, I have just been given the great honor of being the first person to ever understand and properly convey the prophetic nature of and being able to explain the events in 2 Samuel 6, which are so profoundly important to Israel. Matter of fact, for those who are still, women in particular, but some men, who are still awash in the religious perception of modesty, particularly of nakedness and of enjoying sexuality in Yahweh's presence and Yahweh's response to that. It is one of the most profoundly important statements ever made, because Dod's retort to a woman who did besmirch him for his nudity is just the best ever. In fact, even Yahweh says, "That away, kid. I'm proud of my boy." That was really good. And so being exposed to that while being attacked in similar fashion, exactly the same fashion, was just such a tender moment, such an intellectually stimulating moment, such a reassuring moment, such a arm on the shoulder moment between myself and Yahweh. I have been on a cloud these last few days. And yet this morning blew all that away. I'm just going to, before I go into the celebration of Sukah, I want to share some profound insights with you that are all relevant to it. First, there are 3 Chag Miqra. 3. The 7 Mowed Miqra fit into those 3. It is Chag Matzah, which includes Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, but the focus is on Matzah, not Pesach. Chag Matzah, Chag Shabuah, and then Chag Sukah. So what does that mean? That means that Teruah and Kippurim are incorporated into Sukah, and that the reason that Teruah and Kippurim exist is to enable Sukah. Now that means that this decision that I made, well, I guess now about a year ago, that Shabuah had to be the one harvest stand all on its own. And well, I was absolutely right, and Doe enabled it by his thoughts and Bikurim, because Shabuah is a Bikurim harvest. It absolutely stands alone 7 years prior to the fulfillment of Chag Sukah. That means that it will be celebrated in 2 phases on the 22nd of May, 2026, with the beginning of the time of Israel's troubles. And then on the 11th of June, also a Shabbat in 2027, which will comprise the harvest. That with every passing day, I'm convinced, will be smaller and smaller, more and more elite, exactly as Yahweh wants it. Because my job, as I understand it, is not to increase the size of the harvest, but to be judicial regarding who benefits from it. Now, this also means that Teruah has to be fulfilled in conjunction with Sukah in year 6,000 Yah, which is 2033, year 6,000 Yah, 8 years from now. It also means that the purpose of Teruah is to enable Kippurim, which is for the sole benefit of Sukah. That's profound, and we're going to talk more about what all of that means. The second thing I want to share with you is that the religious practice of building tents and sleeping for 7 or 8 days in those tents is religious nonsense. You heard me correctly. There is no tent associated with Sukah. An OL, which is a tent, is actually only associated with Pesach. You heard that correctly. On Pesach, the morning after Pesach, we are to appear before Yahweh, showing him that we benefited from, we understood, we took advantage of this extension of life, so that he has our attention, and that we celebrate matzah appropriately. And so it's after we have done that we can go back into our homes. And the home there is a OL. It's the only mention of an OL in association with the 7 Mowed Miqra. That means the religious observance of Sukah, with their 4 species and their etrog and their building tents. It's religious nonsense. Now, the next part of this that I want to explain is also profound. The verbal root of Sukah, Sukkoth sometimes is how it's pronounced, but it's Sukah, is sakak. Verbal root's not hard to find. It's not questionable. It's absolutely, that is the verbal root. That verbal root means to cover, to protect, and to wall in. I'm in a room in my home. This is perfectly defined by Sukah. It has a covering. It is protected from the elements. It is enclosed. It has walls. That is what Sukah, the root of Sukah, says. Now, are you aware of another word that conveys exactly that same thing? Covered, walled in, and protected. How about Gan Eden? Gan is based on the verbal root ganan. Ganan means to be covered, to be walled in, and to be protected. Sukah and Gan are equivalent. Sukah is not about living in a tent and being more exposed to the elements. It is exactly the opposite of that. It is all about living with God, protected by Him as He returns us to the Gan Eden. That is our final destination, where we live together with Him, covered and protected, defended. It's a powerful insight, is it not? While I was at it, I had the opportunity, Leah tossed this my way when I told her this morning that, oh, by the way, there's no tents associated with Sukah. And, she's raised in a Jewish household and had heard about pitching your tent and living in a tent for all of this time. And so she said, well, another rabbinical myth bites the dust. There we go. And I said, well, you got some time between now and the program we're going to do in Sukah. I've done my homework, but I'd like you to go ahead and check to see if there is any OL associated with Sukah. OL means tent. And one of the things that she sent me was a passage from Amos. A little note. She likes these little notepads, the little 3M sticky notes. That's her favorite. And so she gave me this little thing about Amos. And I went and read it in the Hebrew. And it talks about the reestablishment of Sukah and of Yahweh doing the honors on behalf of guess whom? Dowd, his beloved son. And it says that Yahweh is going to reestablish and rebuild the Sukah of Dowd, very home of Dowd. And the term that he uses to describe how he's going to go about doing that means to provide a protective wall. In fact, the word is in some cases actually described as building a wall of stones. Long way from a tent, huh? Sukah is to reestablish Dowd's home. Dowd is the returning king of Sukah. Another rather powerful insight, isn't it? While I was at it, I had just this strong urge to try to understand, because God says in the 89th Mizmor, in a reference to Dowd, after he tells us, listen, if everything that I've said about Dowd, him being the Savior, him being the Passover lamb, the Zeroah, of him being our Messiah, of him being the returning king, of Dowd being his beloved son, of Dowd being the Messiah, all of these things that he said about Dowd, his chosen one, the one who actually enables the benefits of the covenant. He says all of that in the 89th Mizmor. He says, anyone who would claim anything different is calling me a liar. And I wanted to see if I could better understand the single most controversial part of that whole declaration. And I'm going to do another program on it where I have my full translation and everything sitting before me so I can be very precise with you. But I'm not very good at keeping secrets. And when I learn something from Yahowah, I share it. And I will refine it as I learn more, and we'll learn more together. But what God actually says is quite profound relative to the greater and lesser luminary of the fourth day of creation, being a sign for the Mowed. Essentially saying that the moon is going to reflect the sun's light in a time of darkness, and that the sun is the greater luminary Dode, and that the moon represents his herald, the one who serves as at Dode's side, the one who helps him govern, the one who restores Dode's reputation for all he has achieved. And so as I was reading this, because it talks about the fact that Dode's place of honor, his kese, his throne, but his seat of honor, his place of honor, will be as brilliant as the sun and God's presence. And it also says that he will be Elyon, which means he will be the very influence of God in our world. It doesn't say that he will be God. It says he will be Elyon, which is all things pertaining to the hand of God. And that his position of power, his seat of honor, will be as the sun in Yahowah's presence. Then it goes right on to a statement about the moon, that lesser luminary, the one that reflects the sun's light. And it says that the moon will be fashioned and formed, literally established forever. Well, that always struck me as so uncomfortable, because I'm just still trying to get your mind to wrap around this idea that Dode's seat of honor, his position with God, is as brilliant as the sun. I mean, that sounds like hyperbole. That just sounds like way over the top. But that's how important Dode's role is in our lives and God's plans. I mean, to be called Elyon, all things pertaining to the hand and influence of God, I mean, that's extraordinary. But then that was one thing. I understand Dode is God's chosen one, that Dode is God's beloved son, that Dode is our savior who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim, that Dode is the chosen king, that Dode is the one who enabled the benefits of the covenant, that he is the living embodiment of the covenant. I understand that Dode is our shepherd. I understand that Dode had the spirit of Yahowah come upon him and never leave him. I understand that Dode was this great prophet, a man of great Gabor, and that Yahowah loved him like none other. And even for God, that's setting the bar way, way, way high. But then it's followed by saying the moon is fashioned and formed and will exist, established forever. But how can that be? Every time I read that, I said it's not possible, because this universe has a drop dead date on it. This universe will not exist forever.
It has an expiration.
It has an expiration date.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moon cannot exist forever. If the moon is that object up there in the sky that reflects the sun's light in this darkness of the time that we're in now, it cannot exist forever. It will fail. The whole universe is winding down. It's not spinning up. Now that means that just as Dode exists forever, so does the one who represents him. But what it says next is just mind-boggling, and I was dealing with it, and the call to do the show occurred, and so I left it, and I'm going to return to it. But the word that follows, which is the moon in the sky. And it said, come on, the moon in the sky. Come on, what are you talking about? Word doesn't mean sky. The word speaks of annihilation, of utter destruction, of extermination. You see, it is the moon's job at this time to exterminate those who would relegate Dowd to anything other than God's beloved Son, our Savior, the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Miqra, enabling us to live forever, to be perfected in God's eyes, to have our guilt removed so that we can be part of the covenant family. The Dowd is the returning son. And so that lesser luminary's responsibility is to rid the universe, particularly this world, of those who would annul anything that Dowd represents. That's a really sobering thought for a lot of people. Christianity exists for that purpose. Judaism was established because of a failure in this regard. The mommy goddess cult that has been so egregious says that Dowd can't be the Passover lamb. Well, not only does God beg to differ, but my job is to exterminate those who would in any way diminish the brilliance of Dowd's position with God. So those were a lot of things just to stumble into this morning, even before we began this presentation of Sukah. And the reason that I came to see these things is because we've learned so much in these past 6 months that I really just want to refresh my understanding of what God said about certain things. So Rich walked into my study this morning and said, I assume that you want to do a program on Sukah. And I said, yes, I do. So let's, because he likes to bring up the text. And I said, I'm not sure the text is going to help us a lot here, but I want to read together. We're going to read through the text of what we're going to share over these next few days regarding Sukah. And as I read through it, it was like the blinders have just come off, like the lights were all turned on, like the sun was reflecting against the moon with all of its might. You're in for a real treat as we go through this process, because this is the uncomfortable part, but I want to share it. And then we'll go into what I know about Sukah. When we read all that God had to say about this lesser and greater luminary, about the role that they would play together, it becomes obvious that we are not only dealing with the last possible time for anyone to accept Yahweh and be part of this returning remnant, but that everything that God has said to his people and done for the last 6,000 years all comes down to this moment. It's all focused on these next 8 years. And this next 8 years, God is in a relationship that is codependent. It's hard to imagine God being codependent on anyone, but he is, and by choice. He went all in with the crag, with a fellow who would write under the name of Yada. And he decided that we would work together. He would teach me what I needed to know, and that I had the fortitude, the determination, the character, indeed, even the love for him and his people and his beloved son to see it through. But I'm here to tell you, God literally is all in. Not only is there no one to stand in this breach, should I wake up tomorrow and say, I don't want to do this anymore. There's no time to bring another along. We're out of time.
And we're out of barren women too.
Yeah. So this is it. This is God's putting himself exactly as he was when he went all in with Moshe. When Moshe said, God, I want you to kill me. I can't do this anymore. No one can do this. I hate this job. And you've been exceedingly mean to me to put me in this situation.
Poor Moshe.
God didn't give up on him. He told Moshe, I've got a couple of guys. Don't worry. You get them to the promised land. I'll take it from there. I got a couple of guys. Dode gave up too. Dode had to have numerous times in his life a come to daddy meeting.
And a bit of a timeout too.
He had a bit of a timeout. Dode made some really bad mistakes in his life, but always found a way to overcome them. Always found a way to correct the record and do the right thing. And now everything comes down to this. Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim in year 4000, 33 CE. He told us all about it throughout his Mizmor, particularly in the 22nd and 88th. Yahowah𐤄𐤄𝐿 told us about it in the 9th and in the 53rd chapter of his prophetic text. And it dominates the Torah and prophets throughout. Dode did what Yahweh wanted, what Dode decided to do. He became the Passover lamb. No, it was not human sacrifice. It was his Bashar body that was given. And Yahweh even acknowledges that it's the Bashar that doesn't make it to the morning. It's just a body. It's not a human. What made Dode human was his soul. His soul was never sacrificed. The rabbis are wrong. The mama goddess cult is wrong.
For when the Dode, 100th time.
Yeah, when Dode fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim, it opened for the first time the opportunity for us to live forever, to be immortal. It gave us the first time an opportunity to have our guilt removed so that we appear perfect before our God, so that he can enjoy all of our quirks, all of our uniqueness, all of our attributes and our attitudes and everything, and he can celebrate that part of us that is special without ever seeing any of the flaws. It makes us completely comfortable and transparent in God's eyes. It's the very thing that the children of Israel did not have around Choreb. When they told God to go away, to shut up, they never wanted to hear from him or see him again. Why? Because even though they had spent 3 days getting all prettied up for this big meeting, they felt that he could see right through them and see the evil that lurked in them. Where when you know what Dode did and he removed all of our guilt, you can now pump out your chest. You can open your eyes. You can open your arms. You can be completely free, emancipated, comfortable, empowered,
innocent,
in God's company. You want to hear more from him. You want to see him ever more closely. And it is all because of what Dode did in making us comfortable so we can approach Yah totally unashamed. He now sees us naked and beautiful.
Well, no modesty?
No modesty at all. No modesty at all. And so that is the most profound moment in human history when Dode did those things to enable the Bekurim, firstborn children, which is now celebrated here on Shavuot with a Bekurim harvest, which puts us in position to celebrate the final Chag, this Chag Sukah, with the integration of Teruah and Kippurim, enabling Sukah. where we are protected and covered and allowed to live completely free with God. You see, the reason that there was no clothing in Eden, and the reason that no one felt any shame or discomfort without any covering in Eden, is that God provided it. Something to think about, isn't it? Whatever you choose to wear is or not wear is insignificant. If you are covenant, then you are comfortable in what God's provided. You feel very comfortable exposed to him. All right, so we have Leah here now with us. We're going to begin our review of Sukah, but that's one amazing introduction to it, isn't it?
So before we move on, those claiming that my husband is a bully and that he doesn't have the authority.
Mm-hmm.
Well, read it and weep, babes.
It is true. I am a bully by design. By
Yes,
design,
you
it's
are.
exactly the character and
Mess
attitude.
with the bull, get the horns, ladies.
You know, no, I tell you what, the Yahweh is explicit all the way back when he is initiating the covenant with Abraham. It's all about a ram, a bull,
and a goat.
and a ram. A goat. 3 animals with attitude. 3 animals you don't want to mess with. 3 animals that will protect their own.
But the one that is most feared by men is
of
a
course.
bull.
The bull. Yes.
Revered and feared.
Yeah, the bull was the character that Yahweh chose in the end. And he is explicit about the nature of this bull. And one of the things that was really interesting to this morning, too, as I was canvassing all that we can know about Sukah. We probably won't get to it on this program, but we will on the second or third episode of Sukah. You remember that passage that I've shared probably on Yahowah𐤄𐤅 radio because it was so long ago about how the cow knows its creator, but not the ass. It's not a cow.
Nope.
It's a sower. It's an observant bull. The observant bull that is compassionate enough to do the right thing is the one who has come to know our Creator. Why? Because he represents our Creator. And what's his job? He's going to kick a lot of ass out of the way.
The ass probably most representing Islam.
Well, not only Islam, but we have a lot of people
that are
acting like stubborn, stupid,
mules,
aggressive, belligerent jackasses.
Okay.
And so it's to boot all of them out of the way. You see, that's one of the things that was just so obvious. And now understanding this relationship between the greater and lesser luminary. The greater luminary shines during the day. The lesser luminary illuminates the darkness. And it is in the darkness which evil lurks. And so his job is to be the great eradicator. He is the exterminator. His job is to make certain that those who do not belong in Eden on our return, those who do not belong as part of the Shabuah or Teruah ingatherings,
you're not getting in,
are not there.
It's a good thing you have a nuclear wife. She can help you in that way.
So here we go. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe. Wasn't Hashem. Wasn't Jesus. It wasn't the Lord.
Certainly wasn't Allah.
Wasn't Adonai. It wasn't G-D. It wasn't how glorious is he. It was Yahweh. And Yahweh's first and foremost job, as it says throughout the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and particularly in those passages that are explicitly referencing the job that has been assigned our collaboration. The first and foremost thing that I have done is to reintroduce Yahweh's name. It is Yahweh. That is an accurate presentation of the name of Elohah, God, as guided by his Torah instructions regarding his Haya existence, pursuant to our shalom, reconciliation. If you were to take those words and look at the pronunciation of the Yod, the He, and the Wah, you will know how to pronounce Yahweh's name.
I love it when you do that.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe. What does the name Moshe mean?
One who draws out.
One who draws out. What is he drawing people away from?
Religion and politics and militarism.
Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is to ponder the implications of Sarah, and the plural, Mitzrayim. And Sarah is this time of trouble. When Yahweh says that Israel's about to go into this Sarah, this time of trouble, it means to be confined, to be confronted in an adversarial fashion. It means to be abused, to have persecution and subjugation. And persecution and subjugation and the history of mankind have only come in two forms, religious and political. And so Mitzrayim really is the crucibles of religious and political oppression. And it was Moshe that worked with Yahweh to draw people away from politics and religion. And Israel, you're going to need someone to draw you away from the time of Sarah, Sarah now, because the next 8 years are going to be hellish. He spoke to Moses for the purpose of saying, converse, chit-chat, debar, talk, communicate with words. Why is Yahweh telling Moshe to talk to the children of Israel? Why is Yahweh telling Moshe to speak to the children of Israel? Poor Rich, he's so wrapped up in all of the various feeds for this show and looking at our internet connections and the vocal range and everything else. It is unfair to ask those questions, but
about to lose the streak.
Let me answer the question. Yahweh volunteered to speak directly to the children of Israel. The children of Israel said, nope, don't want to hear you again, don't want to see you again, go away. And Yahweh said, okay, I can deal with that, no problem. And from that moment on, Yahweh has not spoken directly to the children of Israel. He has spoken exclusively through individuals like Moshe, like Dod, like Yashayah. And at this time, the mouth and the cold voice of Yahweh is the man who is looking at you now. And that will continue all the way until sometime during the process of Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah in year 6000 Yah, 2033. God may speak to everyone as part of the Sound and Light show, Fire and Water, on Teruah. I think he will. On Kippurim, when he comes back with his beloved son, Dod, or on Sukah, when he reestablishes the Sukah of Dod, and we camp out in a restored Eden for 1,000 years. But between now and that moment, and the moment where the children of Israel told Yahweh to go away, he has spoken exclusively through the voices of men, and not very many of them over time. So converse with the children of Israel to say, on the 15th day of the 7th month. Got a problem there, Jews. High holy days. Nope. 7th month. Ew. Your rabbis must have lied to you when they said that it was Rosh Hashanah and you accepted the Babylonian New Year and you start your calendar off in the 7th month by making it the first month. Somebody forgot to get the memo. Now, you can't be Torah observant and have Rosh Hashanah. You can't be Torah observant and pretend that it's the first month of the year, because Yahweh in the Torah says it's the seventh. If rabbis, and not if, since rabbis lied to you about this, what else did they lie to you about? Oh, I can answer
I
that.
know everything.
Everything. On the 15th day of the seventh month. Now, who's speaking here? Yahweh's speaking to Moshe, isn't he?
Directly.
This would be in the Torah, wouldn't it?
Yes.
On the 15th day of the seventh month is the festival feast, is the chag of Sukah, of homes, of dwelling places, of shelters, representing a protective covering, a sheltered abode where families live for 7 days to be near and approach Yahweh.
Oh, I got a question though. Do you think they have shopping malls anywhere close where you could pick up some clothes, some Gucci, some Prada, something like that? Do you think?
And during Sukah,
Yeah.
the 1,000-year celebration, the purpose.
You think there's like a shopping mall close where you have to get clothes?
Okay, no. Listen, I do think during the 1,000-year, I disagree with you. I think for the 1,000-year celebration of Sukah, the Goyim will provide the infrastructure and the work, and that the earth is going to have, no religion, no politics, and no conspiracy, and no militaries. The earth will still have structure. I think it will still have homes. I think it will still have electricity and roads and things of that nature. So actually, I think, yes, there will be stores. I don't know what the currency will be or how Yahweh is going to handle that. He didn't need to tell us that. I don't need to know that. But yes, I do think that there will be that opportunity. That isn't the message.
No.
The message is that Sukah is about a protective covering. Gan, as in Gan Eden, is about a protective covering.
Sure is.
If you have Yahweh's protective covering, clothes are irrelevant.
True.
That's what it means. And that's essential. Sukah is about entering Yahweh's protective covering. There's the witness program. We've talked about how the witness protection program. Sukah is indeed Yahweh's version of the witness protection program.
Yeah, kinda. You're right.
So you heard it. You heard it first here. Sukah is a witness protection program. Sukah is the covering. So the reason that no one was ashamed for having been naked in the Gan is that Gan means protective covering. Sukah means protective covering. Put them together.
Connect the dots, kids.
Connect the dots. 7 days. I'm sure that's just by happenstance too, right?
Serendipity. Always. What's the mathematical probability of that?
Everything with Yahweh is 6 + 1 = 7. Yeah. And the ultimate fulfillment of Sukah is the first day of the 7th millennia.
That's right.
6,000 years exactly. From the time we left Eden to the time we return. And this time we'll have 1,000 years and the 7th of 7 millennia to enjoy it here on planet Earth.
7-7.
That is Korah called out. Shouldn't be called Leviticus 23:34. So Jacob, and this is something that I wanted to do at this point. I'm going to stay in the Torah, but I'm going to move away for the moment of God's specific explanation of Sukah, because it's important that we understand why God chose Sukah. Now, I know I'm a lousy person at keeping secrets. I don't tell stories.
You're horrible at secrets.
I don't tell stories as well as Yahweh does. So I've already told you that
I gave you that list, and you're just off running.
Yeah, that Sukah is based on Sukah, and it means to be protected and covered, to have a secure wall around you, and that Gan means exactly the same thing because it's from Ganon. So I've already let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. But let's hear what God has to say about Sukah. We're going to explore first Jacob's experience with it. Then we're also going to explore the children of Yisrael, because both of them had during the Exodus, both of them had an experience in Sukah. And then we're going to hear what my beloved buddy, Isaiah, had to say about Sukah, because they all had some very profound insights. So before we move on,
is Amos going to make it in there at all?
Pardon?
Is
And I've already spilled the beans on Amos.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you got to be quick, Leo. So
I was working.
So Jacob, reward or consequence. Jacob means my stance. I grabbed the heel. It's been crudely transliterated in the last couple of hundred years since the 17th century as Jacob, from Akab, to receive a benefit or suffer a penalty for circumventing or overreaching, digging in by being stubborn, or embedding one's heels to be steadfast. Jacob was whose brother? He was a twin, matter of fact.
Yes, he was. That would be Esau.
Esau. Okay. And Esau is today known as what?
Edom.
Yes, Edom. And so the guy that brings the broken family back together, he is whom?
The man of Edom.
I'm beginning to see a connection here. Okay. So Jacob, reward or consequence?
I'll go for the reward.
Was led to Sukkoth, the tabernacle of protection, if you want, from Sukah. And this is really important. Sukkoth and Sukah is from Sukah. And the K's in it represent Koth, which is an open hand, a protective open hand, particularly the recess of the palm of an open hand, where you would give somebody a lovely gift. And there's two of them. So you got two lovely outstretched hands.
Double portion.
A double portion. He was led to Sukkoth, and he built for himself a home, a house. He built Bana for himself, a Bayeth. He built for himself a what?
A house.
A house, a home.
Imagine.
Okay, but what double portion, right? And then he made a sukkah for his possessions. The sukkah was to cover his possessions. He was living in a house.
Much preferable.
So, pretty good clue there that you are better protected from the elements. You have a more secure roof or covering over your head, more secure walls. In this case, they are concrete made of stone. And because we live in Hurricane Alley, that this is, and we have these glass things here that we call windows. And you know what they keep out?
The rain.
The rain, the elements, and the mosquitoes. Yeah. And if we were to go outside and live in a tent now, we would, for 8 days, the likelihood of us getting a mosquito-borne disease.
What are you talking about? You know the centipedes we have here? I've been traumatized by Sukah.
Yes.
God
is not asking us.
I had one this long run across our plate.
Rather than exposing us to the elements, Sukah is about protecting us from the elements.
Yeah.
You see, in Sukah and Sukkoth, Jacob built a home, a bayeth, a house. He just made the Sukah for his possessions, for his property, including his livestock, based on his understanding from Ma, to consider, and Kana, that which is acquired, valued, redeemed, and possessed, including potentially wisdom. Therefore, Ken, for this reason, the name of this home and dwelling place where his ascension began, Makom, where the standing place, is invited and summoned. It is read and recited. Kara, that would become the Miqra of Sukah, would it not?
Yes, it
Of
would.
Sukkoth, this tabernacle of protection from Sukah, to cover, to protect, even to wall in, as in a protective garden.
Enclose.
Sukah and Ganan have exactly the same definition. And Sukah is from Sakak, just as Gan, meaning garden, is from Ganan. They are synonymous. They mean exactly the same thing.
Imagine that.
That is the lesson for today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should have that as the word for the day.
Oh.
Hey, I think, speaking of word for the day, since we had a crash and burn on the word for the day person trying to impose modesty and direct contradiction of God's testimony, and has gone firmly into the mother goddess cult, where hopefully they feel very comfortable. We have my just best friend, a guy that I have so much respect for, the guy that is now refining and building the Yahowah𐤄𐤅 website, and also is positioning all the books to be repositioned with all the new covers. Joe Page, I did a lot of shows with Joe, and Joe's just my dear good friend, somebody whose character I have admired and intellect I've admired all these years. Joe is married to his college sweetheart. Her name is Mary, and Mary is now engaged, working with Leah. Mary had sent me a note and said, I'd like to have a job. I've got a little free time. And I gave her one. I said, I want a news clipper so that I can do a better job of producing news shows where, you show a video clip and then I can talk about it, like I did back in the Shattering Myths days, which was syndicated radio. This would be, video, but still with news clips and to do that. And I said, I really need somebody that can do that. She said she would do that. And then Leah stole her from me.
You stole my gardener.
And now among her various things in branding, Mary is doing the word for the day. So this could be a good word for the day for Mary. Anyway, it's a delight, because in coming to know Joe, I got to know Mary, and I just think they're a remarkable couple. I love them, love their kids, love their friendship, and
yes, Mary taught me something very fascinating.
Yes,
if I may share.
Sure.
So she was busy the other weekend with her hand up a bull's or a cow's hoo-hoo. She was called in to assist with a livestock birth that was difficult.
Right.
With twins.
Wow.
And this cow had a heart on no, so cute.
Wow.
And the twins were male and female.
Mm-hmm.
So a bull and a female interred in the womb together. And she told me that there's a medical condition, actually, that if a female is interred with a bull, that the female comes up sterile.
Wow. Bulls can be rough, man. You be careful around a bull, man. You do not want to.
Their hormones are shared in utero, and it makes her sterile.
Yeah. Bulls are, when we think of somebody being bullish, we think of all of that kind of stuff. And yes, that's not. There are so many powerful metaphors associated with bull. And Yahowah, I like to say Yahowah cheats. So when Yahowah decides he's going to create a metaphor, a word picture, I mean, they literally walk on all fours. His metaphors are spectacular. Yes. His word pictures are just riveting and brilliant. And so we shouldn't be surprised that he has about 10 different words for bull, and they all shed light on what he is trying to accomplish. So anyway, when Jacob arrived and was included, and within this close personal fellowship, Shalem, speaking of Joe's and Mary's and Leah's and Craig's and Rich's and Kevin's, and I had a lovely conversation today with my good friend, Dr. Jeff. When Jacob arrived and was included within this close and personal fellowship, he awakened and rose early in the day, Shakam, to show the way to get the most enjoyment out of life. It's God's really clear about those individuals who are closest to him and work with him. Without exception, They rise before the sun. Their day begins early. I have started a cadence in my life that started many, many years ago. It's now decades old, where I rise with the sun. I am always up before the sun. And I go right to work. It's my favorite time of the day. And when the sun goes down,
he loves the mornings. It's so annoying.
Yeah, and but it's common with all who are called by God. This is our. It's kind of a. If you're not a morning person, probably not going to be the lead bull in the pack.
No.
In the herd. So he awakened and rose early in the day to show the way to get the most enjoyment and the most productivity out of life in the realm of the subdued in Canaan. Which means the politically and religiously subjugated and controlled, as he came from having been delivered and elevated. So he camped out, having been treated mercifully. He established a dwelling along with the presence of the awakened and arisen. So there's a community of covenant, if you will. There, this is Bereshith in the beginning, 33:18. The religious and political oppressors. This would be Mitzrayim, were intensely resolute with people. Now, this is
aren't they always?
In this case, we're moving now to Shemoth, Exodus 12:33. And so, even the Yatzah. So now that we've covered what Yaakov, so what I'm doing here is I'm just passing over all of the written commentary and analysis that I did long ago for this material, and just going from statement to statement. So sometimes you need a little transition to introduce it. So that was the presentation of Sukah from Yaakov, and therefore the first mention of it. And so we learned a lot about what was there. Yaakov was in his home. That's right. The Sukah was from Sukah, and it spoke of a protected and covered place. All right.
And that little shanty, that was for his beasts and his merchandise.
Yeah, his possessions, that's right. So now we're going to talk about Sukkoth, because there was a Sukkoth that the children of Yisrael entered during the Yatzah very, very early on. And so here's that presentation from Shemoth names, Exodus 12:33 is where we began. The religious and political oppressors, Mitzrayim, the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, and the authority figures in the place of coercive cruelty. Boy, that is really a Yahweh's view of politics and religion when they are intertwined as they were in Mitzrayim. And what that always came to create throughout all of human history. And you'd have to look far and long to find an exception to this rule. I'm not even aware of an exception to this rule, which is that the king always elicited the support of the priests, and the priests always formed an alliance with the king, such that they reinforced one another to the exclusion of all others. And the priest said, yep, he's ordained by God to rule. And the king said, yep, that's the only religion. And so religion and politics have always been intertwined. And the birthplace of that would probably be in Babylon. But there is, more to it than that, because the result of intertwining those two things is you have a hierarchy where the king has free will, the priests support him, and then the military works underneath them. And after the generals, the priests, and the king, there's no one with any authority or independence or power. And every single civilization established a caste system. And that's something that today isn't taught and isn't understood, that all of human history was a caste system where no one had any upward mobility. You were born into a caste system, you did not get out of it. The caste system still exists to a large extent in India because of the Hindu religion. But the caste system locked people into places where everyone in society was abused and used by the king who used the priests and the generals to impose that caste system so that everyone served the single man. So that is the history of humanity. Slaves were simply the bottom of that caste system, but no one had any freedom. So the religious and political oppressors were intensely resolute with the people and hurriedly sent them out of the region, for they said, we will all die. So after the last of the plagues, which was Passover, where the firstborn of the Pharaoh died, and we know that Thutmose, the great's son, was killed at this time, and it's duly recorded that he was, at that point, and having lost the firstborn of every household, as well as the firstborn among the animals, a firstborn male, they said, okay, enough already. This is over. And I'm sure that the very people of Mitzrayim, what we call Egypt today, told the Pharaoh that we're done here. Get rid of these people. We don't know who their God is. Frankly, we don't care. All we know is get them out of here, and get them out of here now, because this is not working out for us. You are not able to stand up to their God. So capitulate, okay? Enough already. And so they said, get them out of here, get them out now, or we're all going to die. So the people brought along their dough before it was yeasted, and there was a return to the grievous sorrow of cruel oppression. So the explanation here is that there was no yeast, which is chamesh, which is embittered fungus that is the culture of ruthless oppression. And so the yeast represents the very thing that only two human institutions can achieve. People can only be oppressed in large numbers by religion and politics. That is what chamash, yeast, represents. It says it right here as clearly as words allow. They did not allow their dough to rise because they did not put the yeast in it, which was this fungus of grievous sorrow and cruel oppression that is created and perpetrated by the religious and political, typically intertwined. They had their kneading bowls bound up in their garments and upon their shoulders to get an early start. Well, what that means is nobody left Mitzrayim on Pesach. Get it? They had a lovely meal. They went outside and said, "Hi, Dad. Thanks for the Passover. Had a really good time. Glad to still be here. Life is good." And once they went outside that next morning, the Egyptians said to Pharaoh, "Get him out of here. Get him out now. We're going to give him parting gifts. We're done." And the children of Israel did not leave Mitzrayim on Passover. So the rabbinical celebration of Passover as the day of freedom is absolute rubbish. It's matzah. Is the day that you are free from chametz, the corruption and persecution and subjugation of religion and politics. Well, that is a very profound insight to live with. Now you know the purpose of matzah, which is to remove from your soul religious and political corruption after you've had your life extended by Pesach. And they, of course, were going to get an early start on the day. When the children of Israel had engaged in the manner consistent with Moshe's message. Something just should be really profound there. Yahweh gave Moshe very detailed instructions as to precisely how they were going to celebrate Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. And the children of Israel did exactly as Moshe had instructed them. And guess what? It turned out really good for them. So, how about this idea, Israel? You've erased Yahweh's name. You've put the rabbis in charge of your lives and your politicians. And it hadn't worked out very well for you, has it? And it's going to get much worse for you. why don't you go back to the Torah, listen to what God had to say, and then act upon it and see if it doesn't work out better for you?
It'd be better for you to go back to your first love.
When the children of Israel had engaged in the manner consistent with Moshe's message, they asked the religious despots and the political tyrants of Mitzrayim for implements and for cooking vessels, things considered valuable, along with other objects of gold in addition to clothing. Isn't that interesting? They'd been out working in the mud. They'd been building blocks with straw and mud. They had nothing. They didn't have any flock. That's with no food to eat, no flock for even to weave wool for clothing. They didn't have any pots to cook their food. They had nothing. They were now free, but they had nothing. And God's view is that his children are never going to be without. You listen to Yahweh, you do as he asks, and you will be given what you need. And in this case, straightforward. They needed cooking vessels. They needed clothing. They needed things that would enable them to survive. So, Shemot, Exodus 12:35. It really should be names as opposed to Exodus. Yatsa means Exodus, to be withdrawn. Shemot is the plural of Shem, meaning name. Yahweh bestowed and granted for the family a sense of empathy, resulting in a favorable and compassionate disposition in sight of the oppressors, Mitzrayim, such that they let them have what they requested. Thereby, they spared Mitzrayim. Isn't that a lovely idea? So, rather than opposing those that God is communicating his message with and being destroyed, Yahweh gave the people of Mitzrayim who had oppressed his people a sense of empathy, such that they gave the children of Israel what they had requested, and they were spared as a result. So the message here is, if you are willing, out of a sense of empathy, to support those that are acting on behalf of Yahweh's instructions, you will be spared. But if you don't, you'll be destroyed.
Oh, you bully.
Just telling it like it is. The children of Israel set out from Ramses. That doesn't mean that the Pharaoh's name was Ramses. The Pharaoh of the Exodus is Thutmose. But Ramses is the name of the city that they were in, that was named after one of many of the Egyptian gods. This was the chief god of the Egyptians, Ra. So Ramses is simply son of Ra. So the children of Israel set out from Ramses to, there's that place again, Sukah, dwelling. It is from Sukah, to be sheltered, to be protected. So here they were going, in the first place they were going to stop after having been exposed to the subjugation and the tyranny of the religious and political establishment of Mitzrayim, was to be sheltered and protected. Lovely thought, isn't it? That's the first thing on God's agenda. I'm protecting my kids. With approximately 600,000 able individuals on foot, besides little children. They baked the dough with which they had brought out of the crucibles of oppression as flat loaves, as uga, quickly prepared flatbreads, of unyeasted bread, of matzah. This is the dress rehearsal for chag matzah, Pesach matzah and Bikurim, without the fungus of yeast, thereby uncontentious, symbolic of removing the fungus of religion and politics from matzahs, to drain out and to remove. Because there was no embitterment added, no chametz, Oh, that would come later. Their loaves were not oppressed or wrongly treated, as they had been expelled. They had been driven and cast out, banished, with all aspects of the prior association completely severed. They were being severed from religion and politics. That is the purpose of matzah.
Imagine that, Yisrael.
From Mitzrayim, the crucibles of political and religious oppression. And they would not have prevailed had they delayed. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to me, whether you are in Europe, the United States, or you're in Israel, I'm not speaking to Muslims. I'm not speaking to those who are overtly religious as Christians. I'm not speaking to MAGAs. I'm not speaking to Marxists. I'm speaking to people whose head is not up their behind. I'm speaking to people who are still capable of being reasonable and rational, who want to be informed and prepared. You're out of time. If you live in America, you need to know that Donald Trump has declared war on you. He's sending in the military against his enemies. And his enemy includes everyone. It's not just Democrats. He's had 3 speeches over 3 days where he has expressly said that the U.S. military is going after those he opposes. So the war against America has begun.
Well, he hasn't seen his song that I did.
He has ignited the war with Russia. He has poured nuclear fuel on it.
Yes.
It's going to evolve into world war. He has betrayed Israel. Mm-hmm. He has told Israel that he is their dictator. Israel responds more aggressively to Trump than Americans do.
Yeah.
Trump is now the dictator of Israel. Israel is now a vassal of Donald Trump.
He's trying
and he has told Israel that the war is over.
Yeah. Oh.
You will pull out. And he is going to negotiate a trade of 20 for 7.2 million. That's the deal. Israel, you're going to get back 20 living hostages. It's going to cost you 7.2 million lives. And you'll be set up to be devoured by Muslims. I share all this with you because the next 8 years is going to be catastrophic. A demon-possessed man, not just a man with dementia, not just a sexual pervert, not just a narcissist and psychopath. A man who is literally possessed by Satan is now head of what would be the most powerful country in human history.
And not just any old demon, the head demon in charge.
Yeah, this is Satan.
Yes.
And the prophets are quite clear. It's Donald Trump that is the person that Christians would know as the Antichrist. He is not only demon-possessed, he is Satan incarnate. He is therefore vastly worse than the 3 most negatively influential men in human history. If we were to look at the 3 most demonic individuals, 2 of 3 actually admitted to being demon-possessed. With the 3rd, it was obvious. And Donald Trump is now a meld of those 3 men. He is Paul. In fact, he gave a speech the other day where he talked about how he has scars all over his body because he's been killed many times. He's been stabbed. He has been wounded. He's taken the stripes for who knows for whom. But Paul's whole thing where he goes into this whole diatribe of all the different ways he's been killed. It's exactly the same thing as Trump said. Why? Because Satan is a one-trick pony. He's got one thing. And the one thing is what he did with Paul, Muhammad, and later Hitler. And the ego of Paul was the same as the ego of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Their attack on their enemies is identical. You read Paul's letters, and Paul's ego and his attack on all enemies, which would be everybody other than Paul, is exactly the same as Donald Trump. They are exactly the same. Muhammad, who also, and Paul admitted to being demon-possessed. It's in the last chapter of Corinthians. Muhammad, who admitted to being demon-possessed twice in his life, at the beginning of the first Ramadan when he was beaten to a pulp by a demon. And by the way, Tucker Carlson has admitted to being demon-possessed. It's not telling you something here you shouldn't already know, but he has admitted to being demon-possessed.
Yeah, I read that. That was
and
pretty
it is it's why he has gone so rogue against Israel, and now is so supportive of this madman and Donald Trump. He is the devil's advocate. Muhammad was the ultimate sexual pervert. So was Donald Trump. Muhammad appeased everyone by treating women as a commodity. He was a terrorist. He was a warmonger. Muhammad was a confabulator, just like Donald Trump, where there was no correlation between what Muhammad believed and said and reality.
Very true.
Muhammad and Donald Trump were the same. They're indistinguishable. The third man that Donald Trump is in his trinity of terror has emulated is Adolf Hitler. And I don't say that connection lightly. His same approach using the military as he did the brown shirts and the Gestapo. Hitler wasn't quite as aggressive, saying that I'm going to war and going to use the military against my own people. He did use the brown shirts against opposition, but as he became empowered, he no longer targeted Germans apart from Jews. In the case of Donald Trump, he's saying anybody that disagrees with him is the target of the U.S. military. His ICE agents and the U.S. military are worse than the Gestapo, far worse than the brown shirts. He has visions of grandeur as it relates to the military. Lies about how all wars are won easily by the United States, and that he wants to go to war. He also wants to call for an insurrection that he then can claim that he is conquering, so that we go into martial law and there are no more elections. He is just like Hitler, just worse. So the reason I share all of this with you, and we are on the cusp of economic collapse, not just in Europe, but in the United States, which will result in complete anarchy. And he's pushing Russia every day into what will evolve into nuclear holocaust. And Israel, according to the prophets, 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die over the next 8 years. We've reached the worst time in human history. I'm sharing this with you because he said they would not have prevailed had they delayed. You won't either. You can either listen to what I'm sharing with you and go to Yahowah𤄶𝐿.com and begin to read and come to understand who Yahweh is, what he's offering, and what he expects in return, or you're not going to survive. In the end, there will be a mortal remnant, and that will include some non-political and non-religious Goyim and non-political and non-religious Yehudim. And they will benefit from the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, and they will make it into the millennial celebration of Sukah. But we're talking about relatively few people. We're talking about perhaps tens of thousands against billions. We're dealing with 1 in a million. So, if you delay, you will not prevail. Moreover, they had not done anything to prepare food or provisions for themselves. You need to be preparing. I'm not talking about doomsday prep. I don't give a hoot about your physical body. I only care about your soul. And the only way you can feed your soul right now is to read what is written in Yahowah𤄶𝐿. That is food for your soul. Take advantage of Yahowah, gain and be nourished by it. Grow in your relationship with Yahowah, or you're going to starve. And again, I'm not talking about bodies. Your bashar is meaningless. Your nefesh is meaningful. The time interval of the children of Israel in which they remained in the realm of Mitzrayim was 30 years and 400 years. Now, the reason it's presented like that is 4 is the number that is used, particularly 40, and this would be 10 40s. An interval for an epoch of testing and evaluation. The number that this is brought against to understand God's timeline is 50. So 40 50s. And the reason for that is that God is very explicit in his Torah, telling us that every 7 times 7 plus 1 years, 7 times 7, 49, plus 1, 50, is a Yobel. And a Yobel represents the time when all debts are forgiven. That is precisely what the bull does on behalf of the children of Israel, as we will go and we will analyze what is said of that bull when we come back to 2 Samuel 6. All debts are forgiven. All people are free. You're liberated. Very much like this, a yatza, a time of liberation and of freedom. God is not a lord. He does not want obedience. He is not trying to own you or control you. He is trying to liberate you. And the most controlling things in human history have been politics, religion, the caste economic system, and militaries, which is why none of those 4 things will exist going forward in Eden. So the interval was 400 years. A 40 times 50, this time of all debts are forgiven, all people are freed, and you return to the land. And the land is reallocated to the people. That is like returning on Sukah, where you get your share of the earth and then the universe. So 40 times 50, 40 Yobels, is 2,000 years. It was 2,000 years from the time we were booted out of the garden for disregarding God's instructions to the time, and that was 3968 BCE, to the time in 1968 BCE when Abraham and Yishak climbed Mount Moriah, and there was the dress rehearsal for Passover, where father and son were told by our father Yahowah that he would provide the lamb, and that he would spare, therefore, Abraham's beloved son, his only son, because Yahowah would provide his only son, his beloved son, Dod, as the Passover lamb. That was on Mount Moriah in 1968 BCE, 40 Yobel after the Exodus from Eden. 40 Yobel from the moment on Mount Moriah that Abraham and Yishak formed the dress rehearsal for Pesach, and of Dod's fulfillment of it as the Son of God, is 33 CE. 40 times 50, 33 CE. That's your 4,000 Yah. And that was the time when Dod in Babylon, as Gabriel told us through Daniel in 555 BCE, the exact date that he would complete Chag Matzah in 33 CE, giving us the exact date almost 600 years in advance. And that's exactly what he did. So it's 33 CE is your 4,000 Yah. That's when the first 3 Mowed and Miqra were completed, making it possible for us to receive the benefits of the covenant, eternal life, perfection, adoption into God's family, enrichment and empowerment. What is 40 Yobel? When added to 33 CE, if we want to discern when year 6,000 Yah will transpire? What if you add 40 times 50, 2,000, to 33 CE, year 4,000 Yah? What year do you arrive at?
2033.
Why am I the first person to be able to deduce that and share that with you when it should have been obvious all the way back, even before 555 BCE? It should have been obvious all the way back in Dod's day. I think it should have been obvious to those who were listening to the Torah. 2033 is year 6,000 Yah. That's when Chag Sukah and the fulfillment of Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah will be fulfilled. Oh, by the way, when Dod came to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim in 33 CE, where did he do so? Mount Moriah. Same place that Abraham had gone. When Dod returns with Yahweh on Kippurim in the middle of Chag Matzah, in year 6,000 Yah, 2033, where is he coming back to? Drum roll, please.
Same place?
Mount Moriah. What does Moriah mean? To respect and revere Yahweh. Putting the pieces together? Are you learning? Are you listening? Are you going to respond? Then it came to pass at the completion of 30 years and 400 years. Why 30? How many intervals have there been or will there be of 40 Yobels? Out of the garden up to the point that Abraham and Yishak enable the benefits of the covenant, or at least provide the narrative that explains how the benefits of the covenant will be provided on Mount Moriah. From 968 BCE, year 0, to year 2000, 1968 BCE, 1. From 1968 BCE, year 2000 Yah, to year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, when Dod would actually fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, enabling the benefits of the covenant just as God had promised. 2. From 33 CE to 2033, the next epoch of 40 Yobel. To year 6,000 Yah, the fulfillment of Chag Matzah, Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim would be 3. 400 plus 30. God gave us all the information we needed to put this timeline together, and yet until I shared it, no one understood it. Now, how valuable is that role? Because if you don't know that timeline, you don't know when Shabuah is going to occur. The rabbis are off by 197 years. You don't know when Teruah will transpire. You're clueless about the approach of the time of Israel's troubles. You have no idea when Yahweh and Dod are returning because you don't know what year Yom Kippurim will transpire in. And you have no idea when we're returning to the Gan Eden. And if you have no idea, you're not going to be there. Don't you think that's essential? And it came to pass at the completion of 30 years and 400 years in this one very substantial, essential, and foundational day. I'm just so frustrated by Judaism and Jews believing that the rabbis are right. What day are we talking about here? They have their unyeasted bread. They have just left Mitzrayim. What is this very substantial and essential day?
Matzah.
Matzah. It isn't Passover, is it? Matzah is the stem, the corporeal, essential, foundational day. And rabbis wouldn't even have you mention it. All matzah is now to them is an ingredient for Passover, which they make a 7-day celebration. But Passover is 1 day, matzah. Chag matzah is 7, of which Passover is just part of. The essential day is matzah. And it came to pass that everyone who was part of the vast assemblage of individuals following their leader, Yahweh, came out from the realm of the religious and political persecution and tyranny of Mitzrayim. What day did they leave politics and religion?
On Matzah.
Not on Pesach.
No, they had a meal and a nice, went to sleep.
So how can somebody claim to be Torah observant and get that wrong?
Exactly.
Seriously, how can somebody have that nerve to be Torah observant and get that wrong? And oh, by the way, who was leading them out? Yahweh. And they erased his name from the lives of the Jewish people. You ought to fire all of the rabbis. Disassociate from them. Stop listening to them. Stop rewarding them. Stop enriching them. Stop acknowledging them. Wipe your slate clean of everything that they have misled you about, which is everything they have ever said. It's Yahweh, not Hashem. And the day of freedom was freedom from religion and politics. And it occurred on Matzah. Read it. Shemoth. Exodus 12:41. I don't know how God could have made any of this any clearer to you. And the entire community of eternal witnesses of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, should, on their own initiative, observe every aspect of it. Every aspect of it. Think about everything I have just shared with you and how utterly distant and different it is than Rabbinic Judaism. Completely the opposite, the absolute antithesis of Christianity. Bears nothing in common with Islam. And so if you are deceived by Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, you are not doing what Yahweh asked, to shamar every aspect of it. You aren't even benefiting from any part of it. Everything we have just learned says that everything you have ever been told in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is wrong, including God's name, including the importance of matzah, including what happened on Pesach and what happened on matzah, and what matzah represents, which is leaving religion and politics behind. I don't know how I could ever share anything with you that is that profound. And if a foreigner, living as a guest, congregating together with you. Now, obviously, this didn't happen at that moment. It was the children of Yisrael, the Hebrews, that were the slaves, and they were being released. And so God is talking about something that's going to happen in the future. There will be a foreigner, somebody of different ethnicity who chooses to congregate with you. A newcomer who has chosen to be woven into the very fabric of what this message to Yisrael from Yahweh is all about. So if a foreigner living as a guest and congregating with you acts upon and engages in Passover, in Pesach, to approach Yahweh, every male must be circumcised. Why did he say that? Why is he talking about matzah here? Why did he go back to Pesach and say, you gotta be circumcised, no exceptions? Every male must be circumcised. In fact, the term is zakar, which means memorable man. Speaking of that ger. What does it mean? Circumcision is the fifth condition of the covenant. If you get to the fifth condition of the covenant, chances are you process the first five. And if you process the first five conditions of the covenant, and therefore you are part of the covenant family, then you are prepared for Pesach. If you don't, Pesach is counterproductive. God is trying to keep you out of Sheol. If you celebrate Pesach and you do not celebrate matzah, you are headed to Sheol because you are now immortal, but still filthy with all of your religious and political guilt still permeating your soul as a fungus. And it is only when you have accepted the terms and the conditions of the covenant, which is to walk away from religion and politics, from the babble, this confusing, intermixing, and confounding interjection of truth and lies via religion and politics, via Babylon, Babel. You walk away from the politics and the culture and the customs of your country and disassociate from that. And then walk to Yahweh along the path he has provided through the Mowed, Miqra, Pesach, Matzah, Bakorim, Shavuot, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah. So that you allow God to perfect you, the third condition of the covenant. And you do so by closely examining and carefully considering these instructive conditions of that covenant. And that as a male, you not only be circumcised, but you, as parents, circumcise your sons on the 8th day. Those are the conditions of the covenant. If you accept those conditions of the covenant, it has you automatically walking away and disassociating from politics and religion, for you trusting Yahweh and relying upon him to remove your guilt via this walk through Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim. That's why God doesn't want to send you to hell unless you give him no other option, because you become immortal, because you celebrate Passover, but you have not availed yourself of matzah. Now, I will also tell you that breaking Pesach and matzah doesn't get you into heaven. Doesn't make you part of the covenant. You can work yourself right out of this family, as so many have done. And then at that time, he may approach Karab and engage in it. You can engage in Pesach and Matzah once you've accepted the terms of the covenant, getting all the way to number 5. And it will be the same for the native-born individual of the land. Therefore, any circumcised person, any uncircumcised person may not consume or eat of it. You cannot participate in Passover, which then is the first day of Chag Matzah, unless you have accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant. Don't do it. It's counterproductive. And there was and will always be one Torah for the native-born individual and for the foreigner. Well, that would pretty much end the 3 Abrahamic religions, wouldn't it? All 3. Paul went to war against the Torah. Christianity is the annulment of the Torah. Judaism is the replacement of the Torah with the Talmud. The Quran is nothing but regurgitated and twisted Talmud stories. But if there's one Torah for everybody, there can be no New Testament, no Quran, no Talmud. One Torah for the native-born and for the foreigner, living as a guest and congregating among you. Shemot, Exodus 12:49. So, I'll conclude with this next statement. But boy, have we ever covered a lot of territory. And I know I've been very bold and frank with you. But that is exactly the role and nature of a bull, is it not? Tell your children about this day. What day are we talking about now? He's made it very clear that he's talking about matzah. He's only gone back to Passover to tell you that don't start down this road unless you are circumcised and you've accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant, which means you walked away from religion and politics. Otherwise, if you're still religious and political, matzah's not going to do you any good. You have to give up religion and politics before it can be purged from you on matzah. That's the message here. And that if you want to understand this, you need to turn to the Torah, no matter who you are, Goyim or Yisrael. So tell your children about this day, saying, for the sake of the participants who benefit from the occasion, Yahowah engaged to do this for me. All of us individually. See, God's not looking for a big crowd. He's looking for a family. He did it for me. If you accept these terms, you respond to them, you are not antagonistic towards his son or his name or his Torah teaching in this regard, his chosen implements, then he did it for you as well. When I came out and was removed from the crucibles of religious and political oppression, which means if you haven't left conspiracy or militarism or the caste economic mentality or religion or politics, you're still there, it's not for you. And since 90% of the world's population is religious, this message is not for them. And since about 80% of the world is political in one way or another, and that these things overlap in about 80% of the world's population, guess what? Most people are excluded twice over. And if you consider the intersection of maybe half the world's population is conspiratorial, favorite conspiracy is blame the Jews. That's why there's so much anti-Semitism in social media. X has become a cesspool of anti-Semitism. So with conspiracy being about 50%, patriotism and related militarism around the world probably at 20 or 30%. People who have a overt affinity for a political party is probably in the 60, 70% of the world. And people who are religious in one degree or another, depending on how extreme the belief is in the religious system, could be anywhere from 70, 80% at a very, very low if we only count those people who are devout, to as high as 90% if we lower the bar to just people who identify as religious. And all four of those, any one of those four individually will keep you out. The four collectively, you're a MAGA, oof, bad. And most conspiratorialists are political and religious. So they've got a triple heaping. And it shall exist on your behalf as an awe-inspiring sign, as an oath. For your hand and for the influence of your actions, you should be guided by what you are hearing. And it represents a zakaron, a reason to recall the most memorable of men. There are three of them in God's story. One for the ages. There are three zakaron. It represents a memorial reminder of the most memorable of men. And this is for comprehension between what you see and observe and what is processed between your eyes. The purpose is so that the Torah teaching and guidance of Yahowah. Does that mean that the Torah is law? No, it's teaching and guidance. Does that mean that the Torah is Jewish? No, it's Yahowah. So the Torah teaching of Yahowah exists in your mouth and in your speech. Pay. You want to serve as the mouth of God? Well, it only has one person at a time. But the fact is that if you want to echo the teachings of the person who is the pay of Yahowah at this time, it had better be Torah that you're conveying. Indeed, because the powerful and strong, the resolute, the chazak hand, unyielding, firm hand, yad, influence of Yahowah, brought you out, removing you, delivering you from the oppressive nature of religion and politics, Mitzrayim. This is the clue that helps us understand the statements that's presented in Yirmiyah 31. So many people misunderstand when God speaks about the reestablishment and the renewal, the reaffirmation of his Bereth covenant, specifically what he means. First of all, he says that it's going to be with Yisrael and Yehudah, which means that the renewed covenant will not be with Goyim or with the church. Kiss your New Testament goodbye. He says it's going to be with Yisrael and Yehudah. And then he says that the renewal and the reestablishment, the Kodesh of the Bereth, is going to be different in the end, year 6,000 Yah, on Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah in 2033, than it was during the Exodus. He said it was comparing it to the one during the Exodus. Why? He said he actually wanted to explain it. He used Shazak and Yad to explain what the difference was going to be. That in the future, he is not going to drag you kicking and screaming. If you're not willing to release religion and politics from your life and remove them from your life, he isn't going to bring you into the millennial celebration of Sukah at all. The children of Israel were dumb as a stone in Mitzrayim. They knew nothing of Yahweh. They knew nothing of the Mowed Miqra. They knew nothing of what Dod was going to accomplish. They knew nothing of the timeline. They knew nothing of the Torah. They didn't know squat. And they were so infused with all the things that were wrong with Mitzrayim, religion and politics, that they, in the caste economic system, that they were absolute horrible belligerents. And so the only way that God could save Israel from Israel, not from, forget about Mitzrayim, that was the easy part. The only way that God could save Israel from Israel was to pull them kicking and screaming by a firm and unrelenting hand. He usurped their free will. He didn't say, you know, I don't have to like it. I don't have to talk directly to you. But I am responsible for dragging you back to the promised land. I made that promise. I'm going to honor that promise. I'm going to drag your sorry asses back to the promised land, even though I have no desire to spend even a moment with you. And he didn't. That's the difference. And then he went one step further. He said that in the restoration of the covenant, not only will he not be dragging people that are religious and political, who are numbskulls, into the celebration of Sukah, but you're going to have to make this decision on your own. You're going to have to expunge religion and politics from your life before this event. He says that the difference will be is that those who are part of this Sukah family and the Sukah celebration, that God himself is going to write a copy of his Torah, teaching, and guidance inside of all of us. Of course, if he writes the Torah inside of all of us, as he has promised, there can be no New Testament, no Gospels, no Zohar, no Talmud, no Quran, no church canon, none of it. It all goes away. When you actually read what God says and you think about it, you have no room for religion. Faith is for fools. Therefore, closely examine, carefully consider and observe Shamar, this clearly communicated written prescription of what you should do in life should you want to live. Sukah, this inscription chiseled in stone regarding the process of being cut into the relationship, drawing near during this eternal witness to the appointed meeting time, Yahowah𐤄𐤅. This is the Mowed of matzah, an eternal witness, restoring testimony, and do so for days upon days, for every day. And what shall exist that when Yahweh brings you into the land of Canaan, the subdued, it will be according to his sworn oath and promise to your fathers, giving it to you. And when this occurs, and your child asks in the future, saying, what is this all about? Say to him or her, by the powerful and strong hand of Yahweh, he brought us out, withdrew, and delivered us from the religious and political oppression, and out of the house of slavery. Exodus 13:14. And it then leads us to Sukah, which is the reason I shared this, and the reason I keep on going long on this program, is I wanted to get to the point that drew us to this statement on Sukah. And when they set out and moved on from Sukkoth, they camped out in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And Yahweh walked in their presence, and during the day he was a columnar cloud, and to lead and guide them along the way by night he was a pillar of fire, to shine upon them so that they could walk day and night. To walk with God, to walk from religious and political oppression to emancipation, empowerment, enrichment, all in the promised land, which of course is a metaphor for Sukah. It is a marvelous story with an extraordinary amount of insights for us to grasp and apply to our lives if we wish to be part of the covenant family. And as I have shared with you previously, don't hesitate. You're running out of time. You barely have enough time to come up to speed, to read these books that are freely presented at Yahowah𐤄𝐿.com. It's time. I thank you for listening.